Left of the box. And more on just housing and affordable housing here in Ontario. Sarah Jama, Independent, MPP of Ontario, which, again, really fantastic politician we have. Ontario has become unlivable. To rectify this, I'm tabling a set of motions alongside Hamilton, Acorn, and the Accessible Housing Network of Ontario next Monday to push Ford Nation to eliminate above guideline rent increases, give collective bargaining rights to tenant organizations, apply universal design principles to Ontario Building Code, and commit to building accessible housing. It'd be nice if there was a party actually going for this as opposed to an independent. Like if the NDP had actually been trying to promote this and get this in place, because it is really good stuff that they're asking for. So motion to in support of renters' rights in Hamilton, whereas application for rent increases above guidelines have doubled in Ontario since 2003. Part of that is Doug Ford got rid of rent control here in Ontario. Whereas fewer than 24 corporate landlords filed most of the application to raise rents above provincial guidelines for most of 2022, exploiting the cost of living crisis impacting many Ontarians to make profit. Whereas 20 landlords in Ontario filed over half of the 470 applications in the first 8 months of 2022, with the top 5 filing over a quarter, exploiting the cost of living crisis impacting many Ontarians in order to make profit. Not surprising. Like they're just raising the rent any way that they can because the Doug Ford government is making it easy for them. Whereas applications for above guidelines increases, AGIs, are a common way to pressure long-time tenants to vacate their rental units, allowing landlords to raise the rent to market rates for new tenants. That gets into like rent evictions or the landlord saying, I'm moving into your unit, so you need to move out, only to then like a month later move out themselves so that they can give it over to a new tenant at market rate. Market rent is no longer affordable across Ontario, and people are either currently experiencing or on the verge of homelessness due to above guidelines rent increases. The Landlord Tenant Board, LTB, system is backlogged and broken. That, in the opinion of the House, the above guideline rent increases should be eliminated from the Residential Tenancies Act. Motion 2, collective bargaining rights for tenants. And she gets into how there's examples across this country of people being able to collectively bargain and fight for their rights. Again, this so often goes unacknowledged by the government, and it's part of the reason why she is such an amazing politician. What about people with disabilities? Where are their rights? Part of her motion is Motion 3, accessible housing. Whereas the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Canadian Human Rights Act, and the Ontario Human Rights Code prohibit discrimination on the basis of disability. Whereas people with disabilities have been trapped in their apartments during power disruptions. And a lot of people during the heat waves and stuff of that sort, when the power went out, they were unable, like if you rely on a wheelchair for mobility, and you need to use the elevator, how are you supposed to get in and out? Or if you use a walker or a cane and you need the elevator, how are you supposed to get in and out and just get your supplies that you need when the elevators aren't working? So you need more ground level units available for people with mobility restrictions like that, or backup power supplies for the elevator. Whereas the ongoing practice of permitting inaccessible housing to be approved and financed is a direct contravention of all the above. And so many apartments are still being built that are not designed for people who live with disabilities. So, like wider halls for, again, wheelchairs, walkers, that sort of thing, so you can get around even the counters and things of that sort, because they keep on building apartments small and smaller and smaller. And so just even being able to maneuver around in an apartment is becoming more difficult. Whereas the Ontario Building Code currently requires that only 15% of new apartments be visitable but not livable for seniors and other persons with disabilities, and thus continues to bar people with disabilities from having the same right to housing as all Ontarians. And so just imagine this, you require a wheelchair, but all the units in the apartment building, the washrooms, are not wheelchair accessible. I look at my washroom. If I had to use a wheelchair, it would be extraordinarily difficult to get onto the toilet. Like it just, there's not the room for it, or to get in and out of the tub, or a tub that has the extra guardrails for people, for seniors, that sort of thing. Like apartments aren't designed or made with those kinds of people in mind. People who need more room, who need more rails for different access areas in their apartment. So this is like, never mind just the ability to access an elevator and leave the building when there's a power outage. Whereas housing policy has for decades discriminated against people with disabilities by building homes only for the able-bodied, thereby excluding 28% of Ontarians. Whereas the cost of building a new apartment is the same whether it's accessible or not, and it is renovations to existing dwellings that are extremely expensive. Whereas the current call for housing affordability ignores the issue of accessibility housing for all, thus forcing vulnerable Ontarians out of their dwellings when it comes to homes no longer accommodate emergent needs. Whereas inaccessible housing results in hallway medicine in hospitals and long wait lists for nursing homes when millions of healthcare dollars could be saved by enabling people to remain in their own homes if they were built to be accessible in the first place. That, in the opinion of the House, this government, and should continue to work in consultation with representatives of the federal government, provincial and territorial governments, and the federal housing advocate, Indigenous governing bodies, older adults, and people with disabilities to ensure access to adaptable, affordable, universal design housing for all individuals with any kind of disability to benefit all Ontarians. And another thing to keep in mind for people with disabilities, ventilation. A lot of people with asthma or allergies to different types of smoke, that's important. That people can live in an apartment where they're not being bombarded by their neighbor's smoke for all sorts of reasons. Looney Tunes 9000, that's fucked up. That really says that they don't give a rat's ass about disabled folks. Yeah, and it's important when she points out that it doesn't cost anything different to make affordable units when you're building them. But yeah, to renovate an existing place to a place that is wheelchair accessible, because like I look at my apartment, there's nothing you could really do to make that washroom wheelchair accessible other than like knocking out a wall and moving plumbing around. Like it's impossible. Like how many of you right now that live in apartments, if you needed to use a wheelchair, is your washroom accessible? Is your kitchen accessible? Let alone, like, are you even able to get into the apartment depending on elevator use and things of that sort? But if you're building new units, make sure there's a significant portion of them available for people who need mobility devices, and they get priority when renting. Zaymeth, Ontarian here. My house was built in the 1880s. It is not wheelchair friendly. Also, like a lot of bylaws and things of that sort, only buildings that are over 3-story talls require an elevator. So all of the fourplexes or 3-story apartment buildings or basement units and things of that sort, none of them would be accessible by wheelchair. Because even the ones on ground level, sometimes there's not a ground level, like it's split. So you have like a sub-basement apartment, and then the first floor is you still have to go upstairs. And most units don't have ramps that lead into the apartment. So even if there is a ground floor, you can't even get in that way. So Bob Trish, my mom was in a wheelchair back in the 90s and was a lot worse. Almost nothing was built for wheelchairs. There's that one guy who used to be part of Twitter that cost Elon like literally millions of dollars or something. And one of his missions was actually to make his country accessible because he also uses a wheelchair for mobility. And we shouldn't have to, like, that's the thing. We shouldn't have to wait till somebody is in that position to get into politics before it's taken seriously. Able-bodied people know, they can see, they just don't think of it at all. But that's why we elect representatives to represent us. And, we shouldn't have to wait this long to have an advocate, partly because she understands it so well because she uses a wheelchair. Because I have lots of friends who have mobility issues and use walkers and stuff, and I know from them, I hear from them all the time. In the winter, sidewalks that aren't cleared properly are an issue, which is why if you're in a municipality and you can try to push for it, do so, because they do leaf collection. The city does leaf collection in the fall. They should also do city-run sidewalk clearing, and that would help people with canes and walkers and wheelchairs a lot in the winter, because they actually get stuck in their apartments and isolated because they can't move around and walk on sidewalks anymore.